What's up? What's up? What's up, family? This is Bishan Riley. Welcome to Spiritual Shift. Once again, coming at you with a new video. This week we're going to talk about, we're going to be exploring Christianity, as sun worship. Is Christianity kind of masking or sort of playing hide and seek with sun worship? Is Christianity really sun worship in disguise? You know, is it hiding behind? Is Christianity really about sun worship, or is it something else? So we're gonna talk about that today, but we're gonna have to go back a few thousand years and kind of talk about how people looked at the area of religion, like what people considered religion. Like religion is something that's a kind of like like what we like the formal religions that we know today. Thousands and thousands of years ago, it wasn't quite the same. When we look back, we say, "Oh, those were religions," but they weren't really religions like we think of religions. But I am going to use the word religion because that'll, just so that we know what we're talking about. We're in the realm that we're in the same realm of ideas. But I'm going to kind of break down like how people viewed certain things around the concepts of God and spirituality and divineness. So we're going to get into it. Let's get into it. I don't want to take too much time up. Again, my name is Bishan Riley. I've been in previous videos, I told my spiritual origin story. So if you want to check that out, just go to a couple videos before this one, and I explain kind of like who I am, why I'm out here talking about God and religion and spirituality and all these things. I'll touch on some of that in this video, but I really want to get into it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So spiritual shift is really so this is what this talk is called. It's a brief look into Christianity as sun worship. And spiritual shift is the name of this channel. Okay, so let's jump right on in here. So spiritual shift, what is spiritual shift? This concept, me and my partner and some other people, so spiritual shift is a place where people that are seekers after truth can come to discuss deep and important spiritual questions and get resources, find answers, but most of all, engage with a community that is non-judgmental, non-confrontational, loving, accepting, and of a like mind. So that's kind of what spiritual shift is all about. We're not about proselytizing or judging people for, you could be, Catholic, you can be a Jew, you can be a Baptist, you can be an atheist, you can be a Muslim, a Hindu. It doesn't really matter because, like I said, we're seekers of truth. We are coming from a certain perspective. I am coming from a certain perspective. I'm going to have some other people on here at some point, but spiritual shift really is a perspective that we are all spokes in a wheel, and Christianity is just a spoke. Islam is a spoke. Hinduism is a spoke, and we're all actually headed toward that center of the spoke, which is the divine world, God, realization, awakening. We're all headed in that direction. So there are things. So that's the basic concept of spiritual shift. So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, and we'll get into really the discussion. So when we look at religion and spirituality and these types of things, like before worldwide organized religion, there was a lot more spirituality in the world. Buddhism in ancient China and India predates Christianity by thousands of years. Organized religion is really, it doesn't, it doesn't, it's sort of like a new phenomenon, like worldwide religions that don't incorporate certain spiritual aspects. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. So Hinduism also predates Christianity by thousands of years. Hinduism talks about the multiplicity of gods. There are lots of deities in Hinduism. And I'm highlighting these for a reason, and I'll explain it later. But I just wanted to just kind of highlight a few things before we get into the nitty-gritty of the topic of Christianity as sun worship. So the spiritual system that emerged out of ancient Egypt or Kemet go back thousands of years before Christianity and flourished all throughout Africa, North, Central, and South America, Europe, and Asia. So the spiritual system that emerged out of Kemet was a worldwide system. And it wasn't religion per se. Like, the people didn't get up and go about their day and then, go to some building once a week and do some things and then go back to another way of life. Even though they did go to do certain things, they did go to buildings, they did go and do certain rituals, festival, they did a lot of those types of things. But when they weren't doing those things, they were still in the mindset of practicing their system. Their whole life revolved around their spiritual beliefs and their beliefs, their worldview, like how they viewed the world and the universe. Everything revolved around that. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to mention that. So the focus in ancient religions and spiritual systems was the world of the divine. In other words, in the ancient world, and when I talk about the ancient world, I'm talking about, you have to go back 2,000 years, then start going back further, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years beyond, say, what we consider the time of Christianity, like 2,000 years ago. We have to go way back beyond that to when we start talking about the ancient world. So there was a concept that there was a divine world, okay? And part of that divine world, it consisted of, one of the templates of the divine world was nature, all right? It was, the people back then, they saw the world around them, the trees, the animals, the water, the animals on the land, the animals under the land or underneath the ground, the animals in life in the water, even the animals that were in the air. I mean, all of this was a divine template for them to observe and to look at and to really study and ponder. And a lot of their processes in spiritual practices engaged nature and were, had nature involved in lots of things. It was a totally different way to look at life. Okay. So there was the cosmos, the stars, the planets, all of the constellations, not only just to, they weren't just looking at them like, oh, that's pretty. It was like there was an understanding that there was something going on in the heavens. There was some kind of drama going on in the heavens, and they were very, 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 very in tune with this. I talked to a fair amount of Christians on a regular basis, and I may happen to bring up astrology or something like that. And for a lot of Christians, astrology is like, oh, that's the devil. But astrology, like I tell them, like they wouldn't have even known where Jesus was if it weren't for astrology. Because the story goes, the Easter story, or the story of the birth of Jesus, the resurrection, the three wise men, they were traveling, and how they knew where Jesus was is because they were following the signs in the heavens. Okay, but that's another conversation. I'm not gonna get sidetracked with that. But that's what the ancient world was very steeped in: the study of the heavens, the study of the astrological signs and what was going on. So this was all a part of the divine world that people were involved in, on a daily basis. This was their life. So that's why, I hesitate to call it a religion, but it was a spiritual way of life. All right. So I'm gonna leave it at that. So part of this, like I mentioned, was harmony with nature. Okay. Being in tune with nature, understanding the role that nature plays in our time and our life here. Okay. It was huge. All right. It was huge. So also observing and learning from nature. Okay. Learning all of, a lot of Christian, what do you call them? People that go and they, I can't think of the name of them right now, but they would go to, say, Africa and different places, South America, but mostly, like a lot of times in Africa, they would go to these places and they would observe how, either through the ancient Egyptian pictures and images, or even more modern African tribes and how they related to animals. They may be wearing a lion's, skin, or they may see from the ancient temples, pyramids in Egypt. They may see like these animals, these scenes of animals and people interacting with animals, and they come up with some idea that these people worship animals or they were into animism. And it was nothing like that. It was nothing like that. Okay. It was a observance of nature, and many of the attributes and characteristics that animals portrayed as they observed and learned from them, they sought to take those, onto themselves and become more like an eagle, or become more like a hawk, or become more, like, an animal that they would see. And this even makes its way into the Bible. This makes its way into the Bible when Jesus would say stuff like, you must be as wise as a serpent, but as gentle as a dove. So I just want to mention those, those few things. So studying and learning from the cosmos through observation and meditation was also a big, big part of, the ancient world and ancient religions and spiritual systems. All right. We keep going here. And ancient religions and spiritual systems also focused on living in harmony with their fellow man and fellow woman. All right. This was very, very important, because the more you develop spiritually, the more you evolve, the more you awaken, the more you are in tune with nature, the more you are in tune with the cosmos, the more you are in tune with the divine world, the more you have to be in tune with your fellow woman or your fellow man. There's no way that you can actually be in tune with all those things and be fighting and trying to kill each other and trying to, it's just, it's not gonna going to line up. It doesn't really make sense. So ancient religion, and let me be clear too, everyone wasn't on that path. Everyone wasn't on the spiritual, highly evolved, highly, path. No, of course not. That's just not the way that, life in this reality is set up. You have good and evil. Of course you do. All right. But there was a lot more spirituality. There was a lot more harmony. There was a lot more harmony in the world, in people, in groups, in large, vast groups of people who were about, harmony and living in accordance with the ancient and universal laws of the universe. So one of the most important things ancient religions, spiritual systems focused on was preparing for the afterlife. So this was a big piece, was preparing for the afterlife. It wasn't about going to hell or even going to heaven. It was about where you were going, how you were going to continue your journey after you passed into the afterlife. This scene here, this is the underworld here. And one of the main functions, this is, if you can see my cursor here, this is a scale. And as the mythology goes, as the story goes, is that when you pass into the afterlife, you would come to be judged, and your heart would be placed on one side of the scale, and a feather would be placed on the other side of the scale. And your heart, the goal was for your heart to be lighter than a feather. So if your heart was lighter than a feather, then you could, proceed to one set of options. If your heart was heavier than a feather, then you would have to, make some other choices, or you would proceed to some other options. And understand that the heart was weighed, the heart. So that means your thoughts, your deeds, your actions were all weighed, so that you would, be judged basically on all of those things. So it was a whole different mindset, a whole different set of expectations as you went through life. Because if you knew that your heart was going to be weighed, then, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go to hell if my heart is heavier than a feather. It wasn't like that. Those concepts were, and I'm going to talk about this in a few minutes. That concept didn't really exist how we understand it in the modern era, like of say like Christianity. That hell wasn't really like you burn in the lake of fire for eternity. That didn't really exist. It was more of an understanding that you passed into the underworld, into the next life, and then you continued your journey, and then you had the opportunity to come back to this life to continue your journey. I just wanted to mention just a couple of things about that. All right, so it wasn't until the Greeks and the Romans began conquering territories around, maybe close to 2,500 years ago, that a movement began to consolidate many of these religious systems and spiritual systems under one religion. So this is about 2,500 years ago, things really started changing. Okay, they started to begin to change. There was, like, if you listen to my other videos, the ones before this one, I talk about all of the different things that were going on, the spiritual concepts and the ideas and the spiritual movements and the different religions and the different sects. There was a ton of stuff going on. All right. Once this began to consolidate under the Roman Empire and Constantine, all of this started to change. All of these ancient things that I've been talking about began to change. Okay. Christianity was being formed 2,000 years ago as Christianity was being formed 2,000 years ago, it took ideas, concepts, and words from established religions and spiritual systems and integrated them into Christianity, but with an altered meaning. All right, they kind of changed the meaning a little bit. Concepts like the concept of God, God the Father, resurrection, salvation, the cross, the soul, heaven, hell, God, the Son, angels, demons, and just tons and tons more. All of that began to change, you know. I'll just give you a couple. I can't go into all of them, but I'll just give you a couple. Like the idea of God, you always had the God figure, and it may have been a father, a masculine, but then you would see the goddess there. Christianity kind of just totally just knocked the feminine out the picture, like get out the picture. It's just God the Father. And that was not an understanding in the ancient world. That wasn't a concept to just have the male God as the progenitor of a religion. I mean, if it did exist, it was certain sects, certain religions that had that just male concept. Okay. A lot of and don't get me wrong, there were goddesses and deities that were at the forefront of certain sects and religious spiritual movements as well. All right. It was just the goddess. But you still had the goddess. You still knew that there was a goddess God, a goddess deity that was out there in the universe that was running and controlling stuff. Even if you just had a religious sect or a spiritual group that just had the male God, okay, there were. So you knew you had that. You had the male and the goddess and the God. You had an understanding that there was a God out there somewhere and there was a goddess out there somewhere. You understood that in the ancient world, right? And then you had like the Kemetic system, in Egypt, there was the God and the goddess. All right. I'm not saying that every spiritual system had the God and the goddess. No. Some just had the father, the God, the male. Some had the female. And that was the one that they worshiped and did all their stuff to. But when Christianity came on the scene, it was just like, no, it's just the God, the male. All right. So that was one thing. That's just not, that's a, Christianity kind of went in that direction, just the male part of the deity. And it's not the whole truth. It's not the truth, the whole truth, but the truth. Resurrection has been a concept way before Christianity. The cross is way before Christianity. I'm going to talk about the cross in a little bit. The soul, that concept is tens of thousands of years old, has nothing to do with Christianity. The heaven and hell is something that was kind of meshed around with to fit into Christianity. God the Son, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, where that kind of came from. And then like angels and demons, I mean, there've been talk, there've been like religions and spiritual systems have been around for thousands of years. So angels and demons are nothing new. Christianity didn't invent the concept of angels and demons. So I'm just trying to make the point, like Christianity, like it didn't come up with these concepts, but what it did is that it took them and then it fashioned them and molded them into its particular version of what these concepts mean. All right. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the sun. The sun has been a symbol of life and abundance for thousands of years in almost every culture, religion, and spiritual system. Like I mentioned earlier, part of the ancient world and spiritual systems and religions, it was like nature, the cosmos. It's like the sun is right there. They knew, they had all of this worked out, that the sun gives us life. If the sun goes away, we're going to go away. If the sun don't come up in the morning, we're done in a couple weeks. Okay. They knew this. They lived from the earth. So they knew that the sun, as well as the other aspects of nature, provided them with sustenance, food. The sun made things grow. They knew all of this. So they didn't necessarily worship the sun, but they revered the sun for its attributes, and knew that the ultimate creator, God, the ultimate deity, the ultimate force, was behind the sun, was the one that created the sun. Okay. So the sun was the symbol of that adoration. Okay. They didn't worship the sun. All right. The ancient Kemetic civilization they have these images all throughout the temples, all throughout the pyramids, like everywhere. All right. And this is just a scene, an ancient Egyptian scene giving homage to the sun. Okay. This is an ancient Hindu deity pictured sitting in front of the sun. Okay. Another ancient Hindu deity pictured sitting in front of the sun. In the ancient world, the sun was never worshipped as a god, but was only really revered and understood to have the characteristics of the creator God. That's what I was telling you. Okay. It's very important. So this is called an equal arm cross, and is an ancient symbol of the sun in many cultures that goes back thousands of years before Christianity. It is also called a solar cross or a sun cross. So this symbol goes back thousands of years. You'll find it in every culture, like many, many cultures around the world: South America, Central America, Asia, Africa. You'll find it everywhere. Europe, you'll find it everywhere. Okay. So in ancient Christianity, you would just see the sun hanging on the cross. Okay. You would see it just across, and then you'd see the sun hanging on it. And it was the symbol that represented something that I'm going to go into in a second. Okay. It represented something and you saw it everywhere. All right. As we moved into the more modern era, a person named Jesus was placed on top of the solar cross and called the Son of God. Now, I'm not going to go into this in this talk. Okay, so I want you guys to really understand that before Christianity, like before Jesus and all this was an understanding. This was an understanding. Okay, and I'm gonna go into that. Before Jesus is even in the picture. Okay, this was a symbol way before Jesus. All right, the cross, and then the cross with the sun on it, way before Jesus. All right, I just want you guys to understand that. Now, as we move into the Christian era, okay, there's a need, and I talk about this in the previous video, so I'm not going to go into Constantine and how the Roman Empire kind of took over Christianity. I'm not going to go into all that, as you got to listen to the other videos. But as we move into the Christian era, Jesus, this man, this figure, this icon, is placed on top of the cross. Now you see the cross there. The solar sun is still on the cross. They put Jesus on the back. They put Jesus on top of that. Okay. In my opinion, I think that was done because when I try to explain to Christians is that Christianity didn't just come down from the sky in a spaceship. It didn't just emerge out of nothing. It was a milieu of spiritual systems and religions and like everything, just like it is now today, but it was even more so. Okay. It was even more so. I don't have time to go into all that, but it was even more so. Okay. There was a lot of little nooks and crannies of religions and beliefs, and like just everywhere. You would walk down the street, and not the street, but I'm saying people believed whatever they wanted to believe. And they had a lot of different beliefs going on. The thing is that what a lot of people could agree on is that there was a sun in the sky and it kept us alive. So we have to give homage to the sun. Okay. So in order for Christianity to begin to merge all these concepts and all these things, they had to take pieces from different religions and put them in Christianity so that people would see their religion, they would see their stuff in this new religion that was picking up speed, okay, picking up traction. They would say, oh, they have the sun on there. Oh, there must be something to this. Let me see what they're talking about. So that's what this is representing right here. All right, so this is a modern day Catholic church with the solar sun cross hidden in plain sight. So I know that you guys have seen this somewhere. Okay, if you go to like wherever you are, wherever you're watching this video, like in your city, in your town, anywhere in the world, I guarantee you, when you're going out to the grocery store, going to work, going to school, going to see whatever, going to the party, check out the churches, especially the Catholic churches, and see if they have this solar cross on their church. I see them everywhere in my city. This is how I know. This is how I know that this is legit, because it's like I see this everywhere, and this solar cross goes back thousands and thousands of years into the ancient world, and it's still with us today. Okay, it's still with us today, and what it represents. This is Pope Francis holding the sun distaff. Here's the cross. Here's the sun right there. All right, let's get into some etymology here. So in the Old English, sun is S-U-N-N-E, from Proto-Germanic, Old Saxon, S-U-N-N-A. In the Dutch, it could be S-O-N-N-E or Z-O-N. All right. It's just different alternatives of how the sun can be spelled. All right. So like in the King's Old English, that means we speak in English today, okay? Hundreds of years ago, there was a different kind of English that was spoken, okay? And English has developed over the years. If you've ever watched any Shakespeare movies or read any Shakespeare, the way that they're talking, oh, thou, whatever, all that Shakespeare stuff, that was an English, a version of how people spoke, whenever Shakespeare was alive. I can't remember when he was alive, but so this is what this is saying. So in the King's Old English, so back hundreds of years when the English language was several versions from where we are today, the King's Old English, the word sun, S-U-N, and or the word S-O-N, the O and the U were interchangeable due to a phenomenon in English called the lazy O. So what they're saying is that when they would translate this word sun, sometimes they use a U, sometimes they use an O. Okay, they call it a lazy O because it's almost like you can do the little U, or you could just do the zero, depending on how you felt that day. In other words, the translators used the letters O and U interchangeably, mostly because they were lazy. Okay, so yeah, they were lazy. But if they were translating this word into, English, when would they use the U and when would they use the O? Like, if it's interchangeable, then, what are you telling me if it's interchangeable? Oh, I could use this one, I could use that one. So are we talking about the sun, like a man and a woman have a child and it's the sun? Are we talking about that? Or are we talking about the sun in the sky? What are we talking about? Okay. It's clear, but it's not clear. And we're gonna keep going. I just want you to know kind of like what's going on out here in these Christian religious streets so to speak. All right, let me explain this to you. So this is the southern constellation, or down south. When the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky in the southern hemisphere, there's a constellation of stars that if you connect them with lines, the stars form a cross. This is a real thing, people, all right? This is a real thing. If you know any astronomers or anybody that knows about the stars or astrologers, verify this with them. On December 22nd, the sun stops moving for 3 days, or it rises on the same degree on the 23rd and 24th. Okay, so this is a real thing. This has been happening for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So this is what I've been wanting to get to. This is what this whole talk is about. It's this slide right here, and some of the previous slides about the sun disk and the sun in the sky on the cross. Okay. On December 22nd, the sun stops moving for 3 days, or it rises on the same degree on the 23rd and 24th. So the ancients would say the sun died on the cross. Okay. On December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree north and is said to be risen, resurrected, or born again. The sun begins to make its trip back toward the northern hemisphere. So let me explain what this is saying. All right. So this is the reason why I was talking about ancient spirituality, ancient religions. This is what they, and when I say they, I'm not talking about every single person on the planet, but this is an understanding that many spiritual systems, many religions had, is that the Son of God, when it rises every day, it's our savior. It saves us. When it goes down, we're afraid because we want it to come back up so that we can continue to live. All right. I'm just telling you what the ancient science is. You can make your own decision on how you feel about this, what I'm saying. So the whole concept of death and resurrection, okay, is based on this ancient astrological reality that you could ask anybody that knows astronomy and science, astronomical science. On December 22nd, the sun stops moving. And it stops moving for 3 days. On the 25th, the sun starts moving again. All right, that's just facts. Now, and this is just my opinion. All right, what then Christianity, when Constantine and all of the people that were involved with building the religion of Christianity, what they then did is take this ancient concept and graft on top of it a concept that this man named Jesus was the Son of God, and that he died on the cross and was buried for 3 days and then rose on the 25th. Okay. Now, like I said, you can believe whatever you want to believe about Christianity. That's not why spiritual shift exists. We are seekers of truth. You're going to hear me say this 1,000 times, and I'm going to say it 1,000 times more. Okay. This is very interesting. When I found this out, so I like I said, you can go back and listen to my spiritual story in another, in the other previous videos. So I went to seminary. I spent a lot of money going to grad school, studying languages and all this kind of stuff. I was super into Jesus, I'm still into Christianity. I'm still into the Bible. I still study the word, okay, constantly, all right? But many years ago, when I came across this concept I was like, oh, this is crazy right here. This is really interesting. Like, so I began to dig, and I'm not going to go deep into this because I could do a whole talk just on this slide right here, but I'm not going to. That's maybe another slide. But I'm just sharing this with you guys because you all have to, like I said, we don't tell you what to believe, but we are seekers of truth, and that's really all we're about, is finding out the truth of things. All right, so let me just go on. As Christianity moved into the modern era, for political reasons, a person named Jesus was placed on the top of the solar cross and called the Son of God. You could still see a little sun behind Jesus right here. You could still see a little sun right there. Why do they keep putting the sun behind Jesus? In addition to the story of the physical resurrection of Jesus, in addition to the physical resurrection of Jesus, was also included in Christian doctrine over the ancient teachings of the astrological procession of the sun during December 22nd, 24th, and 25th. I'm missing a day there. Apologies. So this is all very interesting. This is all very interesting. If the word sun in ancient religions could be translated into Christianity as sun, S-U-N, or son, S-O-N, then this creates many serious implications as to the real nature and meaning of several aspects of the Christian story. Why overlay the ancient astro-theological concept of the Southern Cross with the concept of a physical man dying on the cross and resurrecting? These are important and foundational questions that any real seeker of truth must grapple with and answer for themselves. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And I mean, the thing is, you have to decide what you believe, and not just what you believe, but what you're going to actually do with the information that you have. One of the things that I tell people is that belief is good. Belief is good, but belief is only the first step. Okay, you have to believe something to do anything. Oh, I believe I can walk out the house. So you have to walk. You have to start walking. Okay. But unless you continue to walk, you're never going to make it out your house. Okay. And that's what, so belief is good, but you have to begin to do other things that take you beyond belief. Okay. Into knowledge. Like, you would never say, I believe that I love my kids. I believe that I have a job. I believe that I can drive a car. I believe I can ride a bike. No, you know these things. Now, before you did any of those things, you believed something. But that was the first step, the belief. Now you have to move into knowing that you can do those things, knowing that you love your children. Okay. And that's what, again, spiritual shift is all about. It's moving from belief to real truth, to real knowledge. And that knowledge should compel you to do something, to make your life better, to become greater, and all that. So with that, I hope this has been helpful, and stay tuned for the next video, and we'll see you soon. Remember, love is the way. Peace.